Today, we are going to dive into the international bestseller, Master Your Emotions. We're going to pull out the key tools that can help you finally take the reins on your feelings and really start leading your own life. So, you ready? Let's get into it. So, let me ask you this. Do you ever feel like your life is just controlled by your emotions? You start the morning feeling on top of the world, but by lunchtime, you're completely swamped by frustration. Well, it turns out something like 99% of our suffering comes not from what happens to us, but from the emotions we attach to those events. So, why do our emotions have such a powerful grip on us? Well, it really starts with a simple, kind of mind-blowing truth about our own biology. Our brains are designed for survival, not for happiness. I mean, think about our ancestors. They had to pay super close attention to every little rustle in the bushes. The ones who didn't, well, let's just say they didn't get to become our ancestors. This whole survival-first programming leads directly to something called the negativity bias. Basically, it's our brain's built-in habit to focus on, remember, and give way more importance to negative stuff than positive stuff. It's like a default setting that kept us safe back in the day, but today it can cause a whole lot of unnecessary pain. Here is a perfect, and I mean perfect, example of this bias in action. An author can get 50 glowing 5-star reviews and feel amazing about their work. But then, one single 1-star review pops up. And suddenly that is all they can think about. That one little piece of criticism can totally eclipse all the praise. Sound familiar at all? Now, this brings us to a huge myth about what we think makes us happy. We often believe that if we just get that one thing, win the lottery, land the dream job, whatever, we'll be happy forever. But get this. A really surprising study from way back in 1978 tells a completely different story. So psychologists studied 2 groups of people who had been through these massive, life-changing events. The first group, major lottery winners, people who suddenly had all the money they could ever want. The second group, people who had recently become paraplegics because of an accident, losing their ability to walk. The researchers asked a simple question. A year later, who's happier? And the results was a total shock to everyone. After all the initial excitement or tragedy had worn off, just 1 year later, the happiness levels of the lottery winners and the accident victims were pretty much identical. The winners just got used to their new fancy lifestyle, and the accident victims adapted to their new reality. It's a phenomenon called hedonic adaptation. This study uncovered a really profound truth about where our happiness actually comes from. It turns out only about 10% of it is determined by all the external stuff that happens to us, like winning the lottery or facing a tragedy. And the other 90%? Well, that's all determined by our internal world, how we choose to see things. So here's the bottom line. While a huge win or a terrible loss will absolutely affect us in the moment, our long-term, lasting happiness depends almost completely on how we process and respond to those events. It's not really about what happens to you, it's about the meaning you decide to give it. Okay, so if 90% of our happiness is internal, that's actually amazing news. It means we can learn to control it. We can literally reset our emotions. And this isn't just some abstract idea. There are concrete, practical tools we can use to go from being controlled by our emotions to being in control of them. The book breaks it down into 3 really powerful tools you can use anytime to change how you feel. Just think of them as 3 levers you can pull: your body, your mind, and your environment. Let's start with the first one, your body. This is all about using your physical self to change your mental state. And one of the simplest, most effective ways to do this is with a power pose. Standing tall, opening up your chest, hands on your hips. When you do that, you send a direct signal to your brain that says, hey, I'm in charge here. And this isn't just a feeling, it's backed by science. A Harvard study found that holding a power pose for just 2 minutes, that's it, 2 minutes, increases testosterone, the confidence hormone, by 20%, and it decreases cortisol, the stress hormone, by 25%. So next time you have a big meeting or a presentation, find a bathroom stall, strike a pose. You can literally trick your brain into feeling more powerful. The second tool, your mind, is all about actively using that 90% that's in your control. It's about consciously hitting the pause button and choosing a different interpretation for the things happening around you. Think about it like this. Getting stuck in traffic isn't automatically stressful. It's the story you're telling yourself. Ugh, this is ruining my day. I'm gonna be so late. That's what creates the stress. But what if you changed the story to, okay, unexpected chance to slow down and finish that podcast I was listening to? See? You have the power to choose the meaning. And finally, our third tool is your environment, something we often overlook but is so powerful for influencing your mood. You can actually design your surroundings to support the emotional state you want. For example, instead of letting sad songs make you feel more lonely, you can create an energy playlist that literally changes your brain chemistry. Same thing with opening the curtains to let in natural light or tidying your desk. These small changes send big signals to your brain. Okay, so now we have these tools, let's look at how we can actually apply them, especially with those really difficult emotions. The book argues that negative emotions aren't our enemies, they're actually signals. They're like little messengers telling us that something needs our attention. And if we learn to listen, we can turn them into superpowers for growth. Let's look at a real-world example. Picture a recent graduate, super excited for the future, who starts getting one job rejection letter after another. At first, every single no feels like a punch in the gut. They start feeling worthless, hopeless, and begin to question everything about themselves. But then they decide to use the mind tool. They reframe the whole situation. They realize that rejection isn't some final judgment on their worth. Instead, every no is just a signpost, pointing them away from the wrong path and a little closer to the right one. And just like that, the rejection letters go from being a source of pain to a tool for navigation. Okay, here's another common one, anxiety. An entrepreneur is about to walk into a big meeting with potential investors. His heart is pounding, his palms are sweating, and his mind is just looping through all the worst-case scenarios. He's totally paralyzed by fear. But he doesn't try to fight the anxiety. Instead, he reframes it. He realizes that the anxiety is just energy, a signal telling him that this meeting is really important. So he channels all that nervous energy into preparation, practicing his pitch again and again. He learns to dance with his anxiety, letting it be the fuel that drives him to be his absolute best. So to bring this all together, let's go over the core ideas from the book that will help you truly start to master your emotional world. First, and this is so important, always remember that your brain's default setting is survival, not happiness. Taking charge of your own happiness, that's your job. Second, learn to create a little distance from your feelings. You are not your emotions. You can learn to just observe them without letting them become you. Think of yourself as the sky, and your emotions are just clouds passing through. They come and they go, but you, the sky, you remain. And finally, never forget this. The quality of your life is ultimately determined by the quality of your emotions. Mastering them isn't just some nice little skill to have, it's the art of truly living. So, I'll leave you with this question to think about. We all have that one emotion that just tends to get the best of us. What's yours? Because just by identifying it, you've already taken the very first step toward mastering it. Thanks so much for listening.